Hi everyone, welcome back for a continuation of our discussion about this super immunity dynamic. What we have here is an apparent link between this super immunity, Spain and Germany. In other words, there is a link to the Holy Roman Empire and the expansion of the Holy Roman Empire. This link is related genetically and historically. And so we're going to just quickly look at some of the explanations or assertions or hypotheses about why this is the case. Now, there are a number of linkages between Germany and Spain over the course of history, and this is just one additional linkage between Germany and Spain and also the dynamic of the Holy Roman Empire. As we look at this hypothesis about the linkage between this superimmunity and the Holy Roman Empire, looking at Germany and also addressing Spain, one thing to keep in mind with respect to Spain is that Spain's history genetically is tied to the history of Scotland and the history of Ireland. And so that Iberian area is tied to the western coast of Europe. And so what we are looking at here is some information about the geographic spread of the CCR5 delta 32 resistance allele. And this article came out in 2005. This is important because this is when there were these first public discussions about this CCR5 discovery. What this research looked at was this selection gradient dynamic and also looking at the data coming out of Iceland. And what they've concluded based upon this is that this mutation originated likely in either Spain or northern Germany. And when they looked at this north to south dynamic, one of the things that they kept in mind was the anecdotal evidence that suggested that smallpox was more prevalent in the north than it was in the south in terms of Europe. Now, even though they considered this dispersal dynamic with respect to the Viking hypothesis, the data overall was not consistent with a Scandinavian origin. However, you see high numbers in terms of this mutation in the Scandinavian countries. While the researchers are indicating that this allele has been advantageous for human groups, what they have not addressed is this odd dispersal dynamic and also this dynamic of the CCR5 mutation remaining within certain groups in terms of phenotype, in terms of race, even when you have what would be considered race mixing or ethnic mixing, you still have this concentration of this mutation in select groups of people. And it's ultimately that 1%. When you look at the numbers globally, it's that 1%, even though you have this average of 10% in Europe. When you look at the numbers in totality and you calculate the population of Europe with respect to the population of the rest of the world, you basically have 1%. And what's also missing from this analysis is why did it start in Germany? What was going on in Germany that would create a situation where this mutation would take place and this mutation would spread and this mutation would prove advantageous to a very select group of people? And so we are talking about the Holy Roman Empire, and you have a number of dynamics going on with the Holy Roman Empire, but this question remains to be answered. And we're just going to look at a little bit of information in terms of geography with respect to the Holy Roman Empire so that you can get a better idea of where the Holy Roman Empire was and the time frame for the Holy Roman Empire. And coming out of Britannica, you see that the Holy Roman Empire was concentrated in Western and Central Europe and ruled over by these Frankish and German monarchs for 10 centuries. The time frame is important because when you look at this time frame, you see the 800 through 1806 AD. This is an important time period because you have a number of other dynamics that are going on at the same time, including what would be considered an Arab invasion into this same area. This is important because you also see the CCR5 delta being prevalent in Western Asia. And so you do have some similarities going on here with respect to Europe and Western Asia. And when you are talking about these invasions, and then you have the invasions coming out of the Holy Roman Empire area into Western Europe. And then, of course, you have some other expansions going on. But again, it's unclear what would have been going on exactly that would have precipitated the development of this particular mutation with respect to the area of France, Germany, Italy, coming out of the Arab nations. What would have precipitated this or brought this about, particularly when there is the assertion that smallpox was more prevalent in the north, in Northern Europe, Iceland area. And so, again, these are some questions that need to be entertained and should be addressed. And this is just to give you a picture of the Holy Roman Empire. And you can see during this particular time period, the area that is covered in a sort of blue, lavender, periwinkle-ish color there. You can see all of the lands that are incorporated into this dynamic. You can also see over on the left-hand side, you see Spain, and you also see Ebro over there. You can see it a little bit better here. You can see the Spain on the left-hand side, and you see the Holy Roman Empire concentration on the right-hand side. You also can make note of the fact that there is a place known as Marburg in this area, and there is another disease dynamic related to Marburg. So one other thing to take into consideration is this unique relationship that is going on with respect to the CCR5 and two diseases that are relevant to the indigenous people of America. And you have smallpox and syphilis. Both of these diseases are tied to the history of this CCR5. And both of these diseases have had unique impacts on individuals who are indigenous to America, native to America, identified as Black, brown Americans, identified as African Americans. And so you have these two diseases being transported over from the area that would be the Holy Roman Empire, from the area that would be considered Western Europe, from the area that would be considered Iberia. And so you have a group of people that have a high vulnerability to these particular dynamics. And you have a group of people that brought these dynamics into America that in many instances had high immunity with respect to at least smallpox, we know. High immunity to syphilis also because of the dynamic related to the CCR5. As we wrap this up, this is a very important mutation that we are talking about here, and it has many implications. The question, however, is how and why would this mutation start in the area known as the Holy Roman Empire, and why would it disperse the way that it dispersed, and then why would it still remain concentrated even with this dispersal. And so still you just have, for the most part, groups of people who have a particular phenotype that have this particular mutation, that have this particular super immunity. Remember, knowledge is power. Take care. See you soon.